Welcome to Healthcare Heroes, a podcast powered by NPHub.com.
We created this podcast to highlight the incredible, hard-working heroes inside healthcare.
The entrepreneurs, advocates,
and providers that are saving lives and improving their communities
one day at a time.
These are their stories.
Hey everyone, we are live today with one of my favorite NPs, I think ever, to be honest with you. Latricia, we met 2 years ago now, maybe even 2.5. And you've been on the podcast before, and I'm really excited for this one because there's so many conversations that we have to have, and I'm really excited to have. So Latricia, as we're sort of getting started, why don't we start off with you doing an intro on who you are? Because it's hard to really, because you do so many things. It's hard for me to be like, you do this one thing, but you're not just a business owner and you're not just part of like every board out there. You do 14 things. So it's on you. You give your intro.
Awesome. You're so funny. Thank you, Chris. I love it. I'm Dr. Latricia Harrison. I am a family practice nurse practitioner. I own and operate my own family practice clinic in Houston, Texas. I also am a preceptor. I am a faculty member at a couple of different universities. I am on the board of directors for the Texas Nurse Practitioner Association, as well as the executive board member for the National Black Nurse Practitioner Association. So that's
incredible.
My professional life.
That's your professional life. Do you want to give the humble brag on this award you received from the Texas Nurse Practitioner Association? Or do you want to skip over that? I'm just curious.
Well, I was selected as I received the President's Award from Texas Nurse Practitioner Association a couple of years ago, so that was an honor. Because of my service with them, I do testify on behalf of the nurse practitioners in the state of Texas. Because as you know, here in Texas, we are not independent yet. So we're not able to practice at the full scope of our education. So we still have a collaborating position. So I am working with Texas Nurse Practitioner Association to continue to testify until we are able to function at that highest level of educational training that we have.
So that's actually even just a kind of good starting point. It almost feels like every other month we're seeing a new state adopt nurse practitioners and giving them more, letting them practice to the full scope, to the full ability of their practice, right? And within full scope. Do you see that happening for Texas in the near future? Do you think Texas is going to be like a lagging behind the state that will come up in the very end? What do you think is how's that going to play out?
Well, we're hopeful. We're not really sure which way it goes. We're going into a new session in about a year and a half. So right now they're not in session. So hopefully by the time we go into session, we will be at a place to where we can come to some type of agreement where we can practice at the full scope of our educational training.
I think that's.
So I don't know where we are.
But I think Texas adopting full practice is going to be, I would say, probably the tipping point. I think that's going to be a major accomplishment for the nursing community. And I think it's going to be a really great thing for healthcare in general when Texas finally breaks the mold.
I think so. Texas does set the standard, and for your states that are still holding out or who are not on board yet, I think that if Texas goes and allow that to happen, then the other states will follow behind. So I think it's something that is pivotal that may happen, but when, not real certain. But we're still hopeful.
So one of the things that we're here today to discuss a couple of things, right, Latricia? One, it's talking about business ownership. Even from the beginning of when we first met, one of the things I found so incredible was not only do you have your own practice, but you actually do consulting to help other NPs open their own practice, which is, I think it's one of the most underappreciated roles out there. And I think every NP who owns their own practice, like, they could easily consult with fresh nurse practitioners who want to open up their own practice. And I think I want to talk to you about that. Obviously, talking about precepting, and the advice that for new graduates is another really exciting topic. Starting off with business ownership, do you? First off, I would say my initial question was like, do you regret it? Are you happy that you did it because you know how hard it could be? But how did you know it was the right move for you? Like when you first started?
When I first started, I've always had that entrepreneur spirit. I've always wanted ownership in my own practice, whether it was a practice or a flower shop or something. I've always done entrepreneur in addition to my actual work life. So transitioning into a practice was easy as far as the thought process behind it, what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Having the independence and autonomy is definitely something that I enjoy having. So I think it was just an easy transition. Now, was the road easy to get here? No, you're going to face your challenges. You're going to have to cross those hurdles and, pray a lot and cry a lot and pray some more. But the actual reward that I have from being a business owner is far greater and more appreciative of those challenges that I've had to overcome.
What are those bad days in the first year? Like, what did they look like for you? What happened? What were the things that made you feel like you were in over your head? And I'm asking because I feel like a lot of nurse practitioners, when bringing in sort of these experts who, like yourself, you owned your own practice for, what was it,
14 years now.
14 years you've had your own practice.
14 years. Yes.
So you owned your own business for 14 years, right? So a nurse practitioner looking at you, who's maybe a fresh graduate, is going to say, okay, this person doesn't remember what it was like in the beginning, that first 6 months, that first year. So what did those first sort of few months look like for you? What were the bad days like?
The bad days, well, when I first started, I didn't work here full time. I was here part time and I still had a full time job because I still needed income. So finances, because we did not get lending, we didn't get any loans to start this practice. My husband and I funded it personally. So I still had to work. I still had a mortgage. I still had kids. They still wanted to eat. So I still had
was that an option?
working.
Like they could just say, I didn't really want to eat anymore. I'm good this week.
So they still, something along those lines. So honestly, those beginning days was a lot of anxiety, to be very transparent. I was terrified, didn't really know. I had an employee, my office manager, she was here full time and I wasn't here, but she still needed to cash her paycheck, so it was days where I'm going, will I be able to make payroll? Will I be able to pay the rent? Because you're still going through the credentialing process, which is slow. You're still hoping that patients can find you and start coming in to see you. So you're still building that practice. And yes, you want to take care of people, but you still have to pay bills. So it's still a business, and just learning the inner workings of how to have a practice. This is not something that you're taught in school. So this was all on the job training. Where my office manager and myself, we had to learn how to do billing. We had to learn what the codes meant. We had to learn how to effectively document so we could have the income coming in to match what it is that we do. So, those early days it was work. It was grueling. I worked here at the clinic. I was still teaching full time. I had a side job. I was hustling.
Oh yeah, it sounds
to say
like
the
it.
least.
What? So, in those first couple of years, then, how did you learn the steps to open up your own business? Between getting credentialed, even just like billing and coding, like all those basics. And now you're like, it sounds like simple, but back then, how'd you learn
it? Trial and error. As far as the steps to open up a business, I asked other nurse practitioners who were business owners, what did they do? What was the takeaway? What did they do differently? I remember one lady in particular, she was one of my faculty members actually when I was in graduate school. And I called her and asked her, and she sat me down and she gave me step by step on, things that I needed to be aware of. And then she donated a lot of things to my practice, like beds and,
Oh, wow.
skills, and she donated a lot to me. So we were very blessed when we
That's
started this
amazing.
practice. It was I'm so forever grateful to her. And then just billing and coding, just looking at the bills and picking up the phone. My office manager will call whatever insurance company and ask questions. And from there, she taught me how to do it. And here we are, right, 14 years later, still with the lights on, praise the Lord.
Still chugging away, which is pretty impressive. I think if I remember, the stat is 90% of new businesses, small businesses, fail in the first 5 years, or something in like the first like 3 years. So the fact that you've been around 14 years, you've moved on to more of having established business, which is incredible. Are you still, now that your practice is more established, are you still having to do any like marketing or collaborations, or do your sort of patients just sort of like find you now on your own from referrals?
So the patients find me. It's a lot of word of mouth, a lot of referrals. I actually this past year started to actually do a little bit more marketing, and maybe a different type of marketing, because you still want to stay relevant. You still want to stay competitive. And now you have so many practices, that are available to patients, that you still have to be visible to them. So I've never had a website, so this year we created a website. We
You
went on
never had a
Google.
website?
I Listen, sir.
That's impressive.
We've never had a website. We were not even like on Google. So we actually did the Google deal, and so just a different type of marketing, I guess, to come up into the current times, just to be competitive with other practices. But we still have a huge panel of patients. We get new patients every day. So I don't market in the sense of, let me send out some email blast or something. It's just more information. We have a Facebook page, Instagram, and patients typically find us like that. But we don't really do a whole lot of marketing.
You got to be doing something really, really well with the patient experience then. There's probably
I really believe that it is.
So what does that look like for your new patients? Like, do you guys follow a certain process for like a new patient versus like a returning patient? How does that work?
So basically, let's say the insurance by default will assign a patient to us. And we believe that when the patient walks through the door, they need to feel the relationship building experience. So from the time that they are entering into the clinic, they're greeted, they feel the atmosphere, they feel comfortable, the environment is inviting, and just the relationship, just engaging with the patients feel comfortable. So our new model is every patient feels like family. And that's very true. So it's not something that we actively do. It's something that just kind of transpires based upon who we are, who the staff are in the office. And we just engage with the patients, and they just feel very, very welcome here.
That's a great saying. Every patient feels like family. That's a really nice saying, in fact. So that's what you're doing for your patients. You just started doing marketing. So in the first 6 months, that first year of business, right? Let's go back a while ago now. How did you get patients back then?
So now I did do some marketing where my clinic is located. We're located where there are a lot of apartment complexes. So we just did some door hangs. And we took some door hangs and we went and put them in. What my family did, I didn't. Went and put the door hangs on the doors. They did all the walking, and and the other part was insurance plans. So again, not only do we build relationships with the patients, we build relationships with the reps who come through the door. And I can remember
Okay.
one of the insurance plans, the provider rep, one of the doctor's offices who had a huge patient population, was located not far from me, and that doctor was retiring. So she, in turn, transferred all of his patients to us. So it built up my panel of patients. And from there, each insurance plan just maybe default, our patients will hear about us and say, okay, I want to come. Or we have lots of families that come and they go back and they tell their families, and it just kind of trickles that way. So in the beginning, we did a little bit of marketing just with regular. Again, this was 14 years ago. So, you just had the little 3x5 cards or mail outs or something along those lines. Social media wasn't where it is today. So that's how we did. Old school.
Old school. You had your family, you could put your kids to work.
Absolutely. Get
That's
out there
fair.
and go put that door hang on someone's door.
Yeah. Don't come back here until you hand out these 1,000 flyers. Then you get dinner.
Absolutely. Right. So that's kind of what we did.
Well, it seemed to really have worked for you. Okay. So, I guess before we transition out of like owning your own practice, what are some, I guess, without being like generic, like specifically, what are like some words of wisdom you have for someone who wants to open up their practice right now?
Today you have a lot of nurse practitioner students or nurse practitioners coming out of school. And the first thing that they say is, I want to own my own practice, because I want to spend, 30 minutes to an hour with my patients. And, all of that sounds really good in theory. And I just tell them real straight up, listen, that's not reality. Okay. You do not get to spend 30 minutes with your patients or even an hour. That means you're only seeing 8 patients a day, and you cannot financially sustain seeing 8 patients a day. It's not possible. So I just tell them the truth. Listen, this is a lot of hard work. It's a lot of sacrifice. When I first started here, I had late days where I would come in after work and I would work from 5 to 9 and see patients, or I did weekends. And, I don't do those things anymore. But in the beginning, I did. So it was a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of time invested into being a business owner. It's not just going in the room and seeing the patients. You have to learn the back office. You have to stay abreast on whenever the insurance plans change. What are those changes? How does it affect you seeing your patients? You have to know about prior authorizations. It's so many things that you have to know about on the back side of it. So don't just look at the glory, or you feel like you're going to have all of this freedom to come and go as you please. You can work when you want to work based upon however much money you need. So if you only want to see 4 patients a day, maybe you're only the person in the clinic that needs a paycheck.
Right. That's actually,
you have flexibility.
Yeah.
But, it's not what people think it is.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I think, and even in the sort of like entrepreneurship community, you have that sense of, okay, I'm going to open up my own business. I'm going to, be an entrepreneur, and it's going to be a lifestyle business, right? That's like everyone always talks about. And I'm going to work 4 hours a day, and I'm going to channel my inner like Tim Ferriss, and I'm going to make like $400,000 a month. That's what people think is going to happen, right? And then you don't realize like that first 2 years of business, you were literally every month worrying like, is this going to work out? Like sometimes you even have to ask them like, is my business even making money? Like you might be getting a paycheck, but like, is your business sustainable?
Exactly.
How did you overcome, or how did you balance the financial economic side of being a nurse practitioner and a business owner with that desire to want to see patients?
So, again, I think entrepreneurship is in my blood. My dad owned his own business. My sister owned her own business. So the question's like, okay, how much money do I need to pay the light bill? How much do I need to cover rent? How much do I need to pay the phone bill? How much do I need to do payroll and payroll taxes? Property taxes, all of those things that I don't need the people coming knocking on my door. So how much money? So this insurance pays, let's just say a number, let's say $30 a patient, whatever. Mm-hmm. So if you're getting paid $30 per patient, but you have $10,000 worth of monthly bills, you need to make sure that you see enough patients that you can cover your monthly bills, right? So that's what that's what I've done. How many patients do I need to see based upon the lowest amount of money that I may be reimbursed? Because if I'm reimbursed higher, that's great. And it varies with each insurance plan.
Right.
But if I know on average, if I'm going to get paid $30, I'm going to base it on those $30, how many patients per $30. So then I know what I need to see for the month.
So I think that math of like knowing your numbers is so important. That I think a lot of people are scared of. I think in any business, whether it's a nurse practitioner owning their own business or really anyone, the idea of like sort of knowing their numbers really is like a scary thing. So, and let me ask you some detailed questions. When you factor in sort of quoting knowing your numbers, do you factor in any copays, or are you just factoring like a flat like 30 per patient or something like that?
I'm 30 per patient because copays vary. Again, so it's not a fixed rate. I need black and white. Mm-hmm. Math is black and white. Math is not gray zone. It's either 2 + 2 = 4 or 3 + 2 = 5. It's going to be consistent. So I work with things that I know that are consistent when I'm looking at my numbers. So if I have $300 in copays for the day, woohoo, great, that's over. But on average, I know that I need to know how many patients I need to see per day, per week, for the month to equal what I need to cover my payroll and my bills.
Okay. So it's as simple, or not as simple, but the way you sort of do this is you take whatever your total expense, so you factor in like whatever it takes to keep the lights on in your business. Do you factor in payroll for your staff as well in this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So say that whatever is, I don't know, let's just say it's $10,000 or $20,000 a month. You have to divide that out by, say, I don't know, $30 a patient, or $30 per.
Right. So yeah. I may do. So if it's like, let's just say it's $10,000 a month. So okay. I'm going to divide that by 4 weeks because we have 4 weeks in a month, right? Mm-hmm. So then whatever that number is, then I take that number and divide it by 5, because that means that it's 5 days in a week I'm working. So if I need to see 20 patients a day, 5 days a week, I know that I'm going to hit my numbers for the month.
Okay. So 20 patients, 5 days a week, that's how you break it down.
Yes.
Okay. Now, and then anything else is upside, right? So like I think that that reimbursement generally tends to be like Medicare, right?
Medicaid, I have a huge Medicaid population. So Medicare pays a little bit more, and it just varies again. So you have to look at parameters. Do they have a deductible or not? So let's just say on average, again, if I'm getting $30, I'm just across the board with whatever insurance. So if they pay me $43, that's a $13 profit. But I know that I need, based upon $30, I need XYZ patients.
I think that's a great way to look at it, because even when you're first starting out, I could totally see this nurse practitioner sort of in their office, they're having some downtime, and they're sort of just like tallying off how many patients they need every month that they know their business is doing well. Mm-hmm. Because it's no different than like having like a KPI, right? My key performance indicator is how many patients I need to have in the door every day or every week. And every week it might be 100 patients or something like that. It's like, check it off. That is a great formula for just simplifying your business. Is your business doing well? And it's for you, it's just patients in, and you know that.
Exactly. So basically, it's a down and dirty. This is what I need to do. Are we hitting our goals? It simplifies it for the staff. Listen, we need 20 patients a day. We need 20 patient encounters a day. So are we getting 20 patient encounters? Yes, no. If it's a no, then what do we need to do to achieve 20 patient encounters per day? Because this is what we need to make daily in order to make sure that we are sustaining what we need to be.
Do you have a preference, or do you factor in like new patients or repeat patients?
Across the board for me, if it's $30, it's $30, whether they're brand new or not. Because if it's a new patient and they pay me $50, great, awesome. If it's a well exam, they may pay me $100, even better. But I know that patient encounter for the day is going to
Yeah.
give me at least that minimum of $30, and that's what I need to make per patient to sustain.
Have you ever encountered nurse practitioners that sort of like the way you talk about it, they're either turned off or they're sort of judgmental on the like the business side of it? And how do you overcome that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's not for everybody, and if you don't look at the business piece of it, because healthcare is a business. As much as we want to be compassionate and caring for the patients, and we are, but it's still a business. So if you don't maintain the business piece of it, and that's the part that pushes a lot of nurse practitioners away, is because it's the business piece of it
Yeah.
and not just taking care of the patient, but it's the whole picture for me. So you have to take care of everything in order to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, if your business is not running, you're not seeing patients, right? So then you're actually not doing what
Absolutely.
you're supposed to be doing as a nurse practitioner, right? Which is help patients,
Absolutely.
make sure patients are doing well. And I think that's it's a great formula. Yeah, it's a really strong way to frame it. I guess transitioning from moving into like talking about being a preceptor, and it gets in the same token. These like sort of like these lessons about like business ownership. Do you teach that to your students, or do you keep the conversation with students just specific to the healthcare and the medicine side of it?
No, I'm very transparent. So I teach that to my students. I let them see, because what we do here, we work as a team. So I may pull trash, I may sweep a floor, I may answer the telephone or book an appointment. So the students get to see the real world experience of what it is when what it looks like in business ownership. So I'm not sitting in the back office and the staff is just doing whatever they're doing, and I'm just waiting until a patient walks through the door. No, I room patients. We do everything. So the students are trained when they're with me to do what I do. So if I'm at the front desk answering the telephone, they're at the front desk answering the telephone, because that for me helps you to better understand the inner workings of the office so you can appreciate each person's job duties.
Okay, so you give them that full immersion. They're basically your shadow in the office.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. If I'm not too good to pull some trash, then you're not too good to pull some trash either.
I love that. And I think, I mean, honestly, I think it's a testament to what you're doing at in your business, because there are a lot of entrepreneurs that after they've been in business a long time, after they sort of like quote unquote made it, they sort of pretend to sort of sit at the top and just dictate orders, you know? And then I think what ultimately ends up happening is for a lot of people in business that, you know, their staff, their team tends to sort of get disillusioned with working with them, because it's no longer working with somebody, you're working for them, and they're just kind of barking orders at you.
Absolutely. And my team will be quick to tell me if I become that person, I'll be here by myself. So my
It's a good
team
attitude.
do not hesitate in making sure that I won't ever become this superior person that is so great that I can't do the things that need to be done. Because again,
Yeah.
this is my business. And
Mhm.
I'm grateful to have the team that I have, because realistically, I have an awesome team that support me, and they can run this business if I'm not here. They know the roles, they know what I do, they understand their roles, and they keep it going. If I'm on vacation and we have someone covering the clinic, they're on it. They don't have to call me, because they know what usually is done and how I do things. So having a fantastic team makes a big difference in the success of your business. So
I'm
the
actually
team
really
that I
happy
have is
you said that. Yeah, and I'm sorry if I cut you off there for a second, because I think having a team is, I think, one of the most underrated parts about being a good business owner, right? It's empowering your team so that way they can tell you when you're doing things wrong, because the truth is you usually will. You know, like you will eventually
exactly,
start making
absolutely.
mistakes. You will forget how certain things are done, and you need your team to be, I guess, as engaged to be able to care enough to tell you when you're doing something wrong, right? Because as like the person in
Absolutely.
charge, they don't have to, you know.
hmm hmm And I think that's so important because, one of the things that we incorporate when we bring on new people here is they don't get to say, we're your patients. No, they're our patients, or if you don't buy into the vision and mission of the company, you're
Hmm.
not going to be committed to it. But when you feel like you are a part of the company, then the team is more willing to work with you. They're more willing to call you out when you are incorrect or and it's a growing process. You have to be
Yeah.
able to listen to be able to receive that as well. So it's not always easy when they come and tell me that I've done something incorrect. And, I have to go back and reevaluate and make sure that I do things differently. But that's what makes the business flow because they have a job that they're doing. And if I'm doing something wrong, then it prevents them from doing their job correctly. So they have to be able to correct me and feel comfortable enough to say, hey, that's not right. You didn't do that right or whatever. So
So, how many providers do you have other than you seeing patients?
0.
Okay, so you're the key provider seeing patients.
Yes.
And how many people are on your staff at the moment?
We just lost one. So now we're down to 2 other staff members. So one lady's got a fellowship and she's moved on. So right now we're down to 2 employees and then myself. So right now we're working really short staffed. So we're really dependent on each other to keep it
Yeah.
going.
I think a lot of people listening to this podcast are going to think 2 things. One is they're probably come from 2 scenarios. One is, you know what, like I want to do it myself. And 2, it's, okay, I get it, Latricia, I need to empower my team. I need to, I want them to tell me when I'm doing something wrong. But how do you actually go about empowering your team? Or how do you make them feel comfortable where they can tell you that you are doing something wrong? Because no one teaches that leadership training hell, they don't even teach it in MBA programs. They don't teach it anywhere.
Yeah, right. Again, I think it's just about relationship building. I'm very big on relationships and loyalty. So I feel like I listen to them, I respect them, and then I just tell them, hey, it's okay. Tell me whatever needs to be done or what doesn't need to be done, or if it needs to be done differently. I want to have them to have an opinion. What are your thoughts? How can we make this better? So let's implement some things. What's going to make your job easier? So we just work together and it's just about establishing relationships. It's about a relationship really.
I remember in our even in our sort of like introduction call where we sort of like scoped out some of these like interesting topics, you mentioned relationships a lot, and it got me into thinking of, I believe that you were talking about mentorship, right? Like that you were able to call someone to ask, like when you first started your practice, and get some feedback, and then she happened to donate things to your practice, which was incredible. What were mentors a really big part of your career, and how did you find them?
So mentorship, one of my mentors was again a different faculty member that I had when I was in graduate school. She also had her own business, so I would speak with her a lot. Um, Probably because I was an older student when I went back to school. So I connected with her a little bit more. So I would just ask questions and, if she had something I went and support and, we built that relationship. And once I graduated, she knew that she can call me to precept a student or whatever. So she was just that fallback. If I had a question, say, oh, I don't know how to do this, or what do you think about this? And she would just answer my questions. So mentorship is very important. I think that surely for every new grad who's coming out of school, whether it's obtaining a job working for someone or if they even decide to be bold enough to start their own practice, they need mentorship. You need someone who can hold you accountable for the things that you're saying that you're going to do and ensuring that you get to achieve those things. Because I can say all day long, oh, I want to have 10 clinics. But if I don't get out there and make it happen, it's not going to happen. But if I have a mentor who is invested into my dreams and goals as much as I am, they're going to help to push me to achieve those things. So I think that mentorship is so important because you need someone to help guide you in the career path that you've chosen.
So then the next question, which is probably the harder one, is how do you actually find one, a mentor? How do you make someone your mentor?
Asking. You need to talk. You need to get out and join your professional organizations. You need to be involved because you're going to find other people who are like-minded, who are willing to help you, teach you, guide you. Because just because you've gone to school, you passed your certifying board, now you're out here and now you feel like a fish out of water because now you're on your own. You're scared. You don't have that safety net. So you should have someone that you can call and say, I don't know what I'm doing. What should I do? Or is this right? What is this? I don't know what this is. So you should have that person that you can feel comfortable enough. So that's just about talking with people, asking people, will you be my mentor? And most people will say yes, because they
you just ask them straight
experience.
Up. Will you be my mentor?
I can remember a student asking me straight up. I had just met her. I was still teaching, and her friend was in my pharmacology class, and she asked me, "Oh, my friend's in NP school. Can she call you?" I was like, "Sure, no problem." So the young lady came and she met me, and then she just asked me, "Will you be my mentor?" And I was like, "Okay." I didn't really know what she expected of me. There are no rule books on this is what mentorship is. There's not a protocol guide, but we just made it work. So it was available to her to ask and answer questions and whatever she needed. So here we are.
Did you expect anything back from her?
To do well. I expect you to get out here and do well and don't kill somebody.
That's
so
fair.
My name attached to you. I want to make sure that you're doing it right.
You're representing me now.
Yeah.
That's fair. So, did this? So I guess okay. Then I guess going back to precepting a little bit. You precepted, I'm sure, a bunch of students. I don't think you actually precepted with NPHub though, right? You precept on your own.
On my own. I've always been a precept on my own. So usually the schools will contact me and ask me to precept. Right.
Okay. So, what do you see nurse practitioners constantly doing wrong in the clinical setting? Like it's their first few rotations. What is that one thing you see? Like all of them are just like either they're not going hard enough or they're not like. What are they missing in practice, and what's a tip for them?
I think where NP students struggle the most, which definitely impacts preceptorship, is time management. And it's not necessarily, I think, the students' fault. I think the schools encourage the students to take one patient per hour, which in real life is not realistic. You cannot be in a clinical setting with the mindset of I'm only going to see one patient per hour. Number one, it slows down the preceptor. The preceptor is still trying to hit those 20 patients a day, and you're in the room for 1 hour. So that preceptor is seeing 4 or 5 patients while you're still in the room 1 hour. So I think time management and just for the students to learn work-life balance and how to effectively get into the room and see the patients and come back out and present and do those things. As far as the preceptors are concerned, I think it's just, working without compensation. Preceptors are not paid. And yes, when I went to school, there was no compensation for NP preceptors. But the market has changed. So you went from having a class size of maybe 11 students to now you have 111 students, which means you need more preceptors. And that's more students calling, more time spent. Your preceptor may have, 2 students at a time versus having just one student once a week. They may have a student every day, who knows, depending on their practice. And that's very time consuming. It slows down the preceptor, especially if it's a preceptor who's teaching.
So do you believe that, so what do you think is causing the preceptor shortage?
It's a lot of work. So you have your new grads who come out of school and who have jobs. They are scared to precept because they feel like they're just learning their job, so they can't really teach anybody else how to be an NP because I don't really know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then for the more experienced preceptors or nurse practitioners, you have time. I don't want to precept. It takes too much time. So it puts me behind on my work, and I don't have the time to dedicate to a student the way I feel like I should give to the student or how much time the student may need. So it's time. And you again doing it, you're adding on another expected role within the practice for that preceptor to do, and they're not being compensated for it.
I think this is why, no matter which way you shake it, I believe we have to compensate our preceptors. I think
Absolutely.
I think just what we find is we find the exchange of, just because there's a compensation involved, our preceptors take this more seriously. Our students take this more seriously. And one of the things that we're finding with many students that are kind of on their own, finding a preceptor, doing anything they can, it's not even that. It's first of all, it's especially growing to find a preceptor. Many students are cold calling clinics, or before COVID, they were just dropping in clinics and just like hanging out in the lobby, which would drive preceptors nuts. Like, go away! Like, I don't want to bother. Yes. Don't bother my clinic. Exactly. Don't bother my office manager. But now it's turning even more into, even if things are scheduled, like even if they have a preceptor 6-8 months in advance, well, life happens. COVID showed this, where things change on a dime, and all of a sudden, well, I can't precept you, or if it becomes too inconvenient, I can't. Like, we're not allowed to precept anymore. I don't want to precept anymore. And I think these students are really put into, as more and more schools start bringing in more students into their programs, they go more hybrid. I don't see an end to the shortage. In fact, I don't think there's something that can be done other than like some sort of requirement of people to precept at a larger scale, or universities getting involved, where the shortage is going to really go away.
Right. So the universities are going to have to be involved, because a lot of universities do not encourage payment to preceptors or offering them an honorarium just in appreciation of their time. So the universities may need to incorporate that into their student fees so that the preceptors can be compensated, because you're doing a lot of work, and a lot of the universities will expect that preceptor to really teach that student the real experience of becoming a nurse practitioner. And you essentially, you get some things from the university, but nothing compares to you cashing a paycheck.
Yeah, you're a university, from my perspective, they're outsourcing the responsibility of education onto somebody that they're not compensating. And I would even argue that they're not even really appreciating. I know preceptors have taken on students multiple semesters in a row from one university, never once got a thank you in person or a phone call. It was an email probably sent that was automated through Constant Contact or some software. It wasn't a personal experience. And then on the other hand, you're like, hey, by the way, Latricia, will you take 2 students next semester?
Right.
You're kind of always asking.
Right. Exactly. So where's the reward or the appreciation for the nurse practitioner who has carved out time in his or her schedule to be able to spend time to answer questions, to teach students how to document, allowing them to chart in their system? I mean, it's a lot that you do as a preceptor. So it's not just coming in and have a student shadow you. You're actually teaching and pouring into that student without compensation.
So with precepting, knowing all the barriers involved, knowing how difficult it is, right? Okay, it's going to take up your time. Students vary in quality. Some students are incredible. Other students, they might really slow you down. How do you make precepting work for you? as someone that owns their own clinic, that's taken on students, what are the hacks that you have?
So what I do for my students is, I guess being an educator for so long, I really try to spend time with them as far as, throughout the day if we're not super busy, or come back and say, hey, what questions do you have? What do you think? How did this make you feel? Or whatever, and just kind of give them an opportunity to reflect on their experience. So then it gives me an opportunity to really just pull from them to see how I can help them better. As well as I think I told you before, having them come with a goal. What is it that they want to achieve on this day so that I can help you to achieve your goals? I'm not going to create goals for the student. This is something you have to do for yourself. But tell me what your goals are, and I'll see how I can help you achieve those goals.
Do you let your students know in advance that like you're going to kind of make them set their own goals every day? Or because I would imagine some students probably don't like that.
Well, you don't necessarily have to like it, but this is what you need to do to stay focused. It's what's going to benefit them. I've been a student. This is what worked for me. You don't have to create a goal for yourself, but it may make it easier for you as you transition through this role. Because what I do not do is I can have a student that's graduating and a student that's entering into their first clinical. I'm going to treat you the same. So my expectations are going to stay the same. I expect you to go in, do the assessment, come out, present it to me. Let's talk about it. I don't expect a new student to come in and give me a treatment plan, but I do expect you to be able to go in and do a H&P. So I'm going to push you at that level. And I do also let the students who are graduating help the new students that's coming in. So what are some of the things that you have done as a student? Because sometimes students learn better from their peers than someone who they feel is a faculty or instructor or preceptor. They may be a little bit more intimidated by me, but you can hear it from your peers. And then again, your personality, my personality is very relaxed. I don't believe in leading by fear. So, you can ask me or whatever. And I may tell you might not like it, but it's okay. You'll be all right.
You know the type of people that say I don't lead by fear are the ones that always lead by fear. I know this is true.
No, that's not true. Not really. No, when I went to undergraduate school a long time ago, you were terrified of your faculty. You were scared to do anything because they would send you home. And it was very nursing history foundation. So I don't necessarily feel like that's the best way to get someone to learn. But, you're going to have those students who are going to still be intimidated, just by your role. But, just try and make them relax a little bit, feel comfortable, and laugh, so that they can relax and, feel safe in the environment.
So having sort of like more senior students in their final semester rotations or second to, last rotations, teaching students in their sort of health assessment course. Do you find that to be helpful because the students in their first semester get to learn from a peer, but then two, students who are in their final semesters, by teaching, they're sort of reinforcing what they know?
Absolutely. See one, do one, teach one is my philosophy. See one, do one, teach one. So you see it done, you do it, and then you teach it. If you can teach it, you know it.
I think that sounds so familiar. I think there's some stat that's like you retain like 20% of whatever you read, but like if you teach it, you retain 80% of it. It's like something like teachers used to say back in the day. Okay.
Absolutely, because if you think about it, if you are trying to, like I tell them, you can't memorize healthcare. So if you're trying to memorize it, you're going to forget it. But if you're actually doing it, and if you can teach it, if it's something that marketing, right? Mm-hmm. So you can teach marketing, right? I hope so too. You've written the whole book. So if you can teach your marketing, I mean, you know it off the top of your head. That's because you
Yeah.
know it. But
Hmm.
if I ask you to go in and start an IV on a patient or to write a prescription for a patient, you got to go and learn it, right? Because you don't know it. You
Hmm.
can't teach me how to start an IV if you don't know how to start an IV. So I usually relate whatever I'm trying to get the students to learn to whatever they do in their regular life. So if they are a nurse practitioner that works in their RN life as a med-surg nurse, I may ask them, how do you run a code? You're not stopping and reading the book to run the code. You're doing. That's because you've learned it. So you have to learn this role. So in a senior level student teaching the health assessment student, they should have learned their role surely at the health assessment level. So they're able to now come in and be able to teach something because they know it and they've understand it and they've tweaked it to their own philosophy, if you will. So now
Hmm.
they can be able to pass it on to someone else.
You do see students that you have for say 140 hours or 160 hours able to sort of like mature into that where they sort of they're coming in and they need to see you doing it and then they're able to do it themselves and then like teach other people that are coming in. Like, do you actually see that maturation of students?
Absolutely. I love it. I love it when they have that epiphany moment. It is so phenomenal because you can see that light bulb going off. So, absolutely, you see that transition.
So you're an instructor too, right? Do you prefer
Yes,
precepting or do you prefer teaching? I mean, I guess you're teaching in both, but
it's
do you
all the
prefer
same.
like teaching in a classroom?
I love patient care. So, for me, I get to be in the best of both worlds. I get to do two things that I love. I get to walk in my passion and also get to be able to still see patients and still be connected. So, I'm able to teach and still have that relationship with my patients. So, I get to be in the best of both worlds, education and being a nurse practitioner.
Oh, fair. So I would say, Latricia, I don't want to say we're coming up on time, but I do want to be respectful of your time. I want to make sure that we're covering all the topics that we had initially wanted to. And one of the topics that like, I see that you're really active with um, the organizations, I mean, like with Texas Nurse Practitioner Association, and then also with the National Black Nurse Practitioner Association. Now, this is one of those things where I think every single new nurse practitioner is like, okay, yeah, that sounds good, but I'm busy, or I know I should do it, but they're not going to, and it's the same for really any industries organizations. What are some of the main benefits you got out of these? Like, why should someone actually do them?
Networking, relationship building. Not only that, but promoting the profession. I mean, if this is something that you're truly passionate about, you should want your profession to do well and to excel. So, being able to be connected in a professional organization, it just opens doors for opportunities. You have, other people who may know about job opportunities, who may know about business opportunities, who may know about precepting opportunities. So, making those connections is so important. But if you're only going to work and going home, then you miss out on so many different opportunities. So being involved is really important. And you don't have to be involved with every piece of it, but just being involved and to give back, I think is also refreshing.
I think that actually makes a good bit of sense. I'm thinking that like as more and more NP programs move to that hybrid or online model, right? We're seeing that really explode. Do you, and maybe you know this much better than like I would from an assumption, but do NP students get that sense of community when they're in their master's program? Does that exist?
I, I don't think they feel a sense of community. I still tell them you're developing relationships when you're in these programs that should be lifelong relationships. Just like when a kid goes off to college and you meet your lifelong friends at that level, when you're in school, you should make connections with people across the United States because you're encountering students from everywhere. Surely in your hybrid programs or your online programs, you're meeting people from everywhere, and you can make these connections and build relationships based upon the people that you're meeting. And with technology being the way that it is, you don't have to be in the same city to form a study group. You can study via Zoom or through this platform like you're using, or, so you have so many ways to communicate and connect with people and just see how they're doing things. What did you do to prescribe for a patient that came in with an upper respiratory infection? Well, what about conjunctivitis? So now you have a notebook of tools, a repertoire of tools that you can utilize when you're coming out as a new grad.
Yeah. And I think, is that the famous fax machine that you mentioned earlier in the background?
Yes.
I love it. Still using the fax. Oh, man.
Well, listen, hey, we are old school around here.
You do what you got to do. I'm not going to judge. You've been in business 14 years, but who am I to say? I should really be learning from you. I think we're only in year 2017, right? So this company's only in year 5 or 6 now. No, 5.
Okay.
Right, 2016. So is when we kind of started off. So yeah, I got a ways to go.
Yeah.
Oh man, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so you mentioned though, for anyone mentioning what software we do use listening to this podcast, we use Ecamm to record this podcast. Okay. So I do think actually it would be good to do a sort of like group study session on Ecamm. It could work out well. So yeah, absolutely. Latricia, I guess wrapping up in no rush, would you, and it's so funny, my team, so I'm a big fidgeter, my team was like messaging me, Chris, stop playing with your toys. Literally, like, no. But they don't understand, like, so I used to smoke years ago, and this is how I got rid of my smoking habit,
Awesome. That's called ADHD, just in case you didn't know.
is that it? Why you gotta diagnose me live? Why you gotta publicly diagnose me? I feel so vulnerable.
I love you.
This is not what I signed up for. Okay. I guess I probably could have guessed it. All right. So I guess last question for you. We're trying to make it good. Trying to make it for real. Let's go back to business ownership. This is going to be a sensitive question, but I do think it's really valuable. What, in terms of like you had mentioned, you sort of self-funded your own clinic. Do you remember having a ballpark of what the general cost was to open up your own clinic successfully and to get over that hump of like, to get over that hump of, like feeling things were kind of comfortable for you again? So our NPs know what they should expect, because some NPs, I'm sure someone might think $5,000 enough. I'm sure someone might think $10,000. I'm sure someone might be thinking right now, oh my God, I need an SBA loan of $100,000 to open up a clinic. And I can guarantee you, I know that last number is not right. Much, much less than that. So do you remember, do you have an idea, or do you know how to even calculate that for an NP starting out?
Honestly, when we started on a prayer and 2 post-dated checks. I tell people that all the time. My landlord allowed us to give him a post-dated check, and it was just like, okay, what is the rent and how we're going to make this happen? So it wasn't, I came in with this huge budget and, computers were going to cost this amount and chairs were going to cost this amount. No, we just kind of priced it on the best budgeted item. I'd worked as a nurse practitioner, so I had a general idea of you need desk and chairs, so we just kind of shopped around, and here we are, so we were, again, I told you, we were hustling. We were, just getting the patients in, and we were learning as we go. Today, would I do that again? Probably not. Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't go the same route that I did when I first started. But I would tell a nurse practitioner who is starting out, really come up with a budget, because you really need to include, on average, what your light bill is going to be. So talk to someone who has a practice about the size that you're looking to have, because it's going to be individual for each person. With things being the way that they are now, you have NPs who are starting telemedicine companies. You have no overhead. You have an internet and a computer.
No.
So are you doing a brick and mortar? Are you renting? Are you trying to build a location? So all of those things, again, taking into consideration, how much are your bills going to cost you for the month? A lot of MPs are starting out with their cell phones. So how much does the phone system cost? How much does the internet access cost? It's different prices when you're in commercial versus you're doing it in your home office.
Yeah.
So they have to sit down and really come up with a line item expense report on what things may cost. And if it were me, I would project higher. So that way, again, I know that I hit my numbers.
Yeah. When we first started, we always projected 20% buffer. Always, just in case there was any, anything that came up, And there's always some sort of fee you have to pay. It always comes up.
For me, it was certificate of occupancy. I didn't know anything about it. And when the fire marshal came in and shut us down because we didn't have one and you couldn't work. So I'm like, what is a certificate of occupancy? So now I had to go get the electrician to pull the permits, and it was just crazy. But that was my stumbling block. It was a lack of knowledge. No one told me, and go get it. And it was not cheap.
Yeah, 100%. Mine was business insurance. So and I remember this. I remember talking to my business partner in 2019, maybe 2019, I think. And he's like, "Look, we need business insurance." I'm like, "No, we don't. Like, what? No, like we're focused. I'm always focused on growth. I'm focused on the business. I'm like, I don't care about all that, legal, like crap and all that." And he's like, "No, we need business insurance." So I remember the first quote we got, they thought we were like a medical provider. So they were quoting us like that malpractice insurance stuff. Right? And not realizing I remember that first few months we were paying, back when we were tiny, something like $2,000 a month in just insurance costs. Something stupid. It was awful. Yeah. And then finally we found like an insurance company. It took like almost I think 6 months to a year. We found an insurance company that specialized with tech companies who build marketplaces, basically our company. And they understood exactly what we did and how we don't host information and whatever. And we finally revised that quote down, and we saved a ton of money. But I'm telling you that I never expected business insurance to cost what it does. Never in my life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's insane.
I know. It's awful. Any last parting words of wisdom you'd like to share?
Anyone who's looking into going into business ownership, just stay focused, stay prayerful. It takes a lot of commitment, and this is not something that you just want to jump into blindly. You do want to actually plan, and you have to work it, so it's not going to come easy, but keep pushing through it, and they'll eventually achieve the goals that they have set for themselves.
I love that. I will go ahead and say that anyone in Texas that wants to open up their own business, reach out to Latricia. And see if she'll take you on as a client. And
absolutely.
There you go. I love that. All right, guys, thank you so much. And Latricia, thanks for being on the show today.
All right. Thank you for having me. Have a good day.